Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a while. Sorry, my dog is very loud. She's very protective. But, hello, everyone. We're back. It's been some time. It's been a while. I hope you're all able to sit down, relax, and we can get things started. Sorry, I felt like I had a sneeze coming up. When we last left off reading some stories by Reddit user Dover Hawk. We made it through one series of it had a letter from my last homeowner, or I got a letter from the previous homeowner. Though now we have a new story where we are at, if I'm not mistaken, part 6, which is Welcome to Iris, the murder. In the previous episode, that shows, well, that goes through the story, will be up relatively shortly. I've had some difficulties with Twitch posting it. Well, it seems like there shouldn't be much of issue with it now. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the new scenery we have in the background. I've had people say that the mobs and the rain was too loud and too overbearing, so hopefully you guys enjoy the winter. Though I am curious on what those two dots are on the far back. In the meantime, get comfy, get cozy, relax, and tell me, do you want to hear a story? I don't think you've heard this one. Tell me, have you heard this story? Welcome to Iris, the murder. Posted on r/Doverhawk by user Doverhawk. Again, I was given permission to read this and narrate this. Hopefully, I do the best I can. Before I dive into the execution of the final task, I want to thank all of you for your help. Without you guys solving these, my family and I would have been dead a long time ago, so thank you. For those of you who feel you have somehow aided in my crimes, please understand that my actions were my own as a result of the messages sent to me from Iris. In cracking these codes, you've given me a chance to decide whether or not I live or die. You did not help me desecrate a body or murder anyone. You've given me a choice to survive. With that said, I hope that if he exists, God will forgive me for what I'm about to tell you. The photograph at the bottom of my closet was taken in my mother's kitchen as she washed dishes. I don't think she knew what the photographer was there when the picture was taken, but I have no doubt in my mind she knows now. It was a picture of the back of my mother's head while the photographer held a gun up into the shot. The message was clear. I had 24 hours to take the life of one human person. I guess music's actually not in the mood for this. Actually, let me lower that down. There we go. The message was clear. I had 24 hours to take the life of one human person. I immediately began to question how to pick a target. Who am I to decide who gets to live and die? How can I judge others with permanence? The answer was simple. I don't have that right. But it's either one person's life or the lives of my family, and I knew what side I was on. I began then to think about how to get away with it. A retirement home or a hospital was the easy answer of how to choose a victim, but not without getting caught. Cameras, security guard, staff, and I was supposed to slip in, pull the plug on someone, and step out undetected? No, that wouldn't work. It would have to be somewhere without cameras, and have to look like an accident. Killing someone's brakes would do it, but there's no guarantee that someone would die, or that just one person would die. Starting another fire was the same problem, no guarantees. I began thinking then of all the accidental deaths that have happened. And it was down the road where I came up with a plan. Every city has a part where you don't go after dark, where the streets are littered with junkies and drugs. This is where I needed to go. I reached out to a few old high school friends to get the information I needed. I never done drugs myself, so if I wanted to get anything at all, I needed someone to be my contact. I eventually found a friend whose cousin sells hard shit. I told him I needed it for a party, but he didn't ask any questions. He gave me his cousin's number and I called it. I went to the bathroom in the 7-Eleven and I did as I was told, hiding $100 cash in the ceiling tile. An hour later, I returned and found 5 plastic bags filled with powder and a syringe. The weight of the drug in my pocket combined with knowing what I was about to do next felt like an elephant in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I reminded myself what was at stake and kept going with the plan. I will admit I had to Google how to do the next part. In my car, I emptied out all 5 bags into a large enough spoon, then mixed the powder with a little water. With my lighter, I cooked the mixture until it bubbled. Then I added a ball of cotton to the top. I let the cotton soak into the solution, then inserted the syringe and sucked all the liquid I could from the cotton. Now I needed was a victim. I drove around looking for the right person, hoping to maybe find someone passed out in the gutter whom I could quickly inject and be done with it. But no such luck befell me. Plan B was going to be harder, but effective. I drove around until I found the right woman, one dressed a little too scantily in this weather, and one with the visible track marks of her legs and arms. I pulled up and asked her how much. Her response was one I didn't expect. Fuck off. I knew I hadn't made a mistake. I couldn't have made a mistake. How much? I asked. I got $100. She rolled her eyes but walked over the curb and got inside the car. Her face reflected a lifetime of poor decisions. Her eyes were deep set, and her skin was wrinkled, and her cheeks were sunken. The amount of teeth that she'd lost in another life. She could have been pretty, maybe even beautiful, but this life had been cruel to her, not allowed her to have such luxury. You got a hotel? She asked. Nah, I said. I thought we'd do it here in the car. She shrugged, and I put the car into drive. She saw the needle sitting in the cup holder. What you got there? Tried to act nonchalant. Just a little fun for the evening. It's a lot for one person, she said. She was like a dog eyeing a steak half off the grill. She was hungry. I offered her some and she smiled. Her teeth looked like mm, pickets of a fence and been abused by decades by harsh weather. She picked up the needle and eyed it. What is this, anyways? Heroin? It's called Speedball, I said, and her eyes lit up. You really want to party, she said, not really meaning it to sound like a question. She pulled a ribbon from her hair and tied it around her bicep with her teeth. With practiced precision, she found a vein in her arm and slid the needle into her flesh, watched carefully as she pressed the plunger down with her thumb, careful not to give herself too much. In a moment of blind instinct, I reached out and grabbed her hand and pressed her thumb down hard, emptying the syringe into her body. She looked up at me with an expression of shock and horror as she realized what had just happened. I pulled into the side of the road, checking first to make sure I didn't see any cameras. Get out, I told her. What the fuck? She asked fiercely. Get out of my car, I said again. She swung at me, but I stopped her hand and slapped it down. I pulled the gun from my holster and pointed it at her. Get out of my car now, I said again. As she got out of my car, the look of her face will forever haunt me. Her eyes were wide and dilated, like those of a fawn, and I saw a brief glimpse of the woman she was, not the hooker, not the junkie, but the person she was. I slammed my foot against the gas pedal and sped off into the night. I watched the news intensely for the next several days, waiting to find a story of a dead hooker murdered by someone who didn't have any other choice, but I never saw anything. Just as I hoped, her death was chalked up to another overdose, or another junkie whose life had been too cruel for them to survive for very long. I called my mother the next morning and she answered the phone. She said her phone had been on the fritz and she hadn't been able to make any calls. My girlfriend called and he packed too. She said her phone hadn't been working and her apartment had been fumigated, so the landlord put her up in a hotel the other side of town. While she was there, the car had broken down, so she'd been essentially cut off completely from me over the last several days. Things I thought had started to go back to normal. That was until this morning. While I was putting gas in my car, a man came up to me. He called me by my name as he approached, and he handed me a flash drive and a blank business card. The business card said, bunch of numbers. I went home and plugged in the flash drive into my computer. It only had one file, which I uploaded here. And it has a link. Oh, and it has a link. Oh, that's not. Oh, I want to click. Do this. It's an imager. Oh, that's strange. Hmm. Strange, very strange. Part 7. Welcome to Odin. Hmm. Strange. Hmm. Very well. Let us proceed with Welcome to Odin. Hmm. Welcome to Odin. For those of you who aren't familiar with Iris, please understand that by continuing to read the story, you may discover things you were better off not knowing. You may not want to see the man behind the curtain, for his face is far more horrible than you could ever imagine. Iris is the international radical tertiary system, an organization who uses violence and fear to force their will upon innocent individuals. I was one of those individuals. When my friend died after seeing an email, I turned to the internet for closure, but what I got instead was the key to the door. I would have remained shut. Iris had contacted my friend and me, as I came here to discover, with the intention to get us into their game. I had 4 tasks, each sent to me via email, and each message being harder than the previous to decrypt. If I didn't complete those tasks, I was told my loved ones would be killed. Soon my girlfriend went missing, and after I expressed my disgust for the request task, my parents did as well. I got the message loud and clear. I had no other option other than comply. These 4 tasks escalated in difficulty and brutality quickly. The first being a simple exchange with another person playing the Iris game. The second was the act of vandalism. The third was the procurement of a human finger. The final was the murder of the innocent. With no other choice, I completed the task to the best of my ability. My family was returned to me. They each gave me stories about how they had been sent away by some faceless authority, and they had enjoyed a great time during their time away from home. But again, the message was loud and clear. The completion of the fourth task still haunts me. I remember the look of the woman's face as I forced the plunger down with my thumb. She knew she was about to die, and I could see her life flash before her eyes in that one poignant moment between us. In the days following the fourth task, I learned as much as I could about her because she deserved that much. Her name was Rose of Evelyn Newford. She had 3 children with but no custody rights. She sent them money on Christmas and their birthdays and tried to visit them as often as she could. She was a person with as much complexity as I had, if not more, and I took that away from her. Her eyes are tattooed in my dreams, the permanent mark to remember her by. In time, though, I think the memory may fade if given the chance, but I don't think I will ever have that option, because as I just learned, the game is far from over. The last message sent to me before the email stopped said, "Welcome to Odin." Iris was only phase 1, and I think phase 2 has just begun. I got another email 2 nights ago. I didn't want to even post it because I want this to be over. I didn't want to even know about whatever sick task they were about to give me. But this morning, a man approached me on the street as I was walking to work. My hair was as wild as his eyes, which kept darting back and forth as they were watching a tennis match that only he could see. He called me by my name as he approached me. I went to ask him if I knew him, but he held his finger to his lips and spoke in a fast, low voice. It is. He handed me a flash drive and a white card. With he was missing a finger on his left hand. This is as much as I know. I opened my mouth to speak, but he held his hands. Normal. It's Godspeed. He walked away immediately, crossing the street and melting into the crowd. I looked down at the card he'd given me for the flash drive. It was white and had two words written on it, one above the other: Blowfish and Cadillac. When I got home, I plugged the flash drive into my computer. There was only one unnamed file, and when I opened, all it was this. It proceeds to show a bunch of numbers and letters, all organized in different forms. Yeah, there's no link to the part 2. Does Welcome to Oregon have a part 2? Uh, that is interesting. Let me ask the author. Bum. Ok. Vamos a ir más noche hasta 24 horas, ¿no? Como sea, ahorita se hace Navidad. Como digo, se será 24 horas, ¿no?
Sí.
Pues vamos a irnos, ¿no? Como sea, pues. Okay. For those who do not know, yes, I speak Spanish. Movement phone. Not the two. Which maybe I'm mistaken about something. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am. But I'm going to share this into the Discord. Not the Discord, but the chat. So you guys can check with me. This is the link to Welcome to Odin. That is the link to the actual to see the story with me. Am I missing something? And I could be. What are the chances of that? We'll wait until the author says something. Because it feels like it kind of ends abruptly. My last message sent to me before an email stopped with Welcome to Odin. I got another email, then we had a conversation with the man. Interesting. Welcome to Odin. What's not Manchester? You have matched with Jessica. We'll catch up with Dover Hawk. Hopefully they do update me with that if Welcome to Odin does have part 2. But I do like to read a different author. We have, let me see, listening to a channel. Let's see a channel. Thank you, sure you can never say. Just cut me as an author and link back to my story, which I will do. You say to let my hand about to start. Nearly. Can't type. Got the extra R in narrating. We'll see. Does Welcome to Odin have a part two? Because I would like to see if there is a part two. But for now, we'll we'll say hello to a different author. We have we have the author, we have the author, a Reddit user named the Librarian Chick. Funny name to say. I enjoy it. Hopefully, we can figure something out. Hmm. Strange how my OBS is somewhat struggling, which shouldn't be. As much as I like the overlay. Hmm. Okay. So, we'll be reading from users on Librarian Check. They have a lot of stories, but one that caught my attention was the reason why you should not burn witches. So, you want to hear a story? And have you heard the story? There's a reason why you should not burn witches. This is posted on r/no sleep. Let me preface this by saying I have always been very honest about what I was. I've never had any shame with where I am, with what my mother was, my grandmother, and a long line of women stretching back to seeming at the beginning of time. I am a witch. I have always practiced, I have always had power, and not once have I ever harmed another living being. Not ever, despite what anyone might say. Several years ago, I saw a shirt a young lady was wearing on a rare trip to town. I said, "I'm the descendant of witches that you feel like to burn." That shirt made me laugh. I ended up buying one off the internet at the public library. I don't have much internet at home, he said. I've been a self-imposed hermit for decades. It's for the best. I made the choice, and I have to stick with it. Back in the 70s, when I was relatively young, something dark came into our town. Even I couldn't discern whether it came from. Not even my mother or my grandmother or any member of our small coven would understand its origin. Regardless of where it came from, it had come here. We first became aware of this dark thing when the first child went missing. Little boy turned up later, dead and drained of eminence, like a dried cicada husk. We were blamed at first because of course we were. If there was anything from rain to snow to someone with a bad case of acne, everyone in town pointed the fingers at us. Some did it in jest, some in habit, and some in outright malicious hatred. Edith had been the first one to sense the thing. I still remember that evening. We had met for tea, no witchy business at all. It had been a delightful afternoon tea when the poor lady had clutched her pearls and gasped like she'd seen a mouse. "Are you all right, Edith? Edith? Tea too hot?" My mother had asked softly. But I knew she suspected that was not the case, not with the way her eyes narrowed as she looked in the middle-aged woman. "No, dear heavens. Something has come to our town. I felt it pass through like a cold wind down my spine. Something wicked." Tears were in her eyes as she spoke. My mother nodded and poured out her tea, reading her tea leaves while the rest of us looked on in anticipation. Her face was grim as she read what the bits of waterlogged tea leaves had to say. "My dear ladies, we have work to do," my mother said, standing, wiping her hands on her apron as she stood. We got to work, day and night, each of us using particular talents to not only track the thing, but find a way to contain it. It consist read her ancient tomes in text. Mary tracked the beast to its lair using her divination skills. My mother and grandmother had their spells and potions, and I helped. My skills were in dreams and their interceptions. I spent many days fast asleep in medicine-induced stupor to glean, and I could bout this interloper. All I could learn was it was ancient. Perhaps at one point it was worshipped. It had been summoned by those with less skill to do their bidding. Instead, it had killed its would-be jailers and fled into the world, finding victims and blood where it could. Do you have a name, Gretchen? Without a name to bind it, our prison will not be as effective. My mother asked me. Her voice filled with concern and anger, though thankfully that anger was not directed at me. No, mother, no name. It has many names, and the dreams have not revealed its true name to me, I said softly. No matter. The magic and binding will hold, though ourselves will be bound to it until our death, my grandmother explained. Her voice was almost and strained. It was old and almost strained. After so many weeks of working magic, she seemed as frail as paper and as thin. And what about after our deaths, Elizabeth? What then? Mary asked, her voice sharp, one thin of patience. Then it shall be free, unless we learn its true name and banish it from whence it came, my grandmother said with a tiny shrug. A price we must pay to contain it. It's been killing children. It will not, and it will not stop until it has gone through every innocent life in the town, Edith said, teary-eyed. We lay our traps. It was easy. It was willing bait for the thing. Willing bait for the thing. I was the youngest, and mother and grandmother had filled me with potions and tinctures to make me more appetizing to the thing. We lured it to a small cave located in our property. We needed somewhere private where prying eyes would not see us, and more importantly, not disturb the thing once it had been captured. It came quickly on its shadowed feet. It took no effort to hide itself. It was darkness itself. No prey escaped it once it had its eyes set upon it. By this time, over a dozen children and young women had been killed, more blame laid at our feet. We were being threatened to our faces. Dead animals were being thrown into our yards. Bricks with threats written on them were tossed through our windows. When I felt the thing's presence at my back, it took all my strength. I had to run. Our magic was strong, and unbeknownst to the thing, it was already trapped. I could feel the panic set in when it realized it could not leave the cave. Whispered threats were uttered as it reached to me, and it found it could not grasp me. It writhed, it screamed and begged, and it promised all manner of worldly goods and powers if it would let us go. We ignored it. We all took turns sealing the small cave with bricks and mortars, not no easy task to do in the forest of unsteady ground, but we managed. When the final brick was laid, our powers were tied to its contentment, to its life, and hopefully eventually death. As long as one of us lived, it would be locked behind its prison of earth and brick. But when we started to die, one by one, as old age claimed us, my grandmother was first, followed by my mother. Constance drowned. On the trip to Florida, Edith and Mary lived to be in their 90s. But the Grim Reaper comes for everyone in the end. I'm the last. I'm in my 80s. I have never married or had children, though it's not for lack of trying. The rumors that had been me and the Covenant who had killed those innocents all those years never went away. They only grew, and no man wanted me. I have been friendless now for many years. I had tried to find out the true name of the thing, but to no avail. I had looked in books, I had scorned the internet, and found nothing. I have reached out to other supposed witches and been met with scammers and liars. I feel so alone, and now I am dying. The last few years of harassment has gone on so much worse. I have not been able to safely leave my home, as when I do, I am followed and stalked. I've been threatened with death, and today it seems like they have made good on their threats. My home is on fire. The flames are creeping along my hallway. I can see the light from the fire getting brighter, and there is smoke. Oh, so much smoke. Outside my window, I hear them screaming the same thing people like them would scream for centuries. Burn the witch! Burn the witch! Burn the witch! I've fallen to the floor and I'm coughing and I'm afraid for myself and the others. There are many innocent people that live in this town now. I can feel the things stirring now. I can feel with anticipation. Once I die, I will be free and the bricks begin to fall away. As the flames finally reach my door, I fall pity. I have no illusions but about the pain and fear this creature will unleash on the people of this town, and they are but to learn a very important lesson, one that will be written in the bloods of their children. There's a reason why you shouldn't burn witches. I like that one. I like that one. It was from the point of view of us being the witch. That's new, right? I liked it. Good one. Hmm. Let's see. Let's look for the next one. Here we are. Ah, the time frame in these stories. There's a reason why you should not burn witches posted 2 days ago, yet this next one was written a year ago. Fascinating, really. Rami, have you heard this story? Oh yes, wait, I forgot. You're supposed to. I forgot. I agreed. I was going to share these stories as well. And this is why you should not burn witches. There's a reason why you should not burn witches. And then this next one I'm about to read. Copy the link. Those in the YouTube chat or comments, hello. There's a link. I'm Eclipse. I wanted to say, if you want to have the links, please do check them out. They're on the stream. Oh, sorry. I'm being surrounded now, aren't I? Strange, really. It's a bit too many people. Hmm. Ah. The snow is building up too much, actually. I hope I don't freeze out here. Either way, I feel warm enough. As warm as I can be. But please do come by onto the stream, even if it's just to say hello or something. It's very important. Reason being because, well, you can see everything. You can see the notes, you can see the links, what leads to everything and every place. And let's continue. Have you heard this story? My father walked out on me 20 years ago. Today I found out why. I haven't seen my father in years. It had been 2 decades since I had set my eyes on the man. My last clear memory of him was the one of him walking out the door when I was 5 years old. I had been watching cartoons. I turned just in time to see my dad's back as he walked out the door, wearing his standard blue jean jacket with his head down as the door slammed behind him. My mother was on the floor, sitting cross-legged and crying a few feet away from me. The sight shocked me. My mom never cried. She was my rock, and I had never seen as much as a tear come from her. I crawled over to her and sat in her lap while she sobbed, completely at the loss of what to do. I remember I stroked her hair to comfort her, something she had done countless times for me when I was sick or upset. "Where's Dad going?" I'd ask innocently. My mom looked at her eyes red and puffy while crying. "Your daddy's gone, sweetie. Your daddy left us." She mumbled. The divorce had to be done in absence. No one knew where he had gone. I remember walking around town with my grandmother, picking up missing posters of my father. She could never accept that he had simply walked away from all of us. The posters stayed a few months before they all got torn down. Years passed. My mom remarried a great guy. I got therapy to deal with my dad, leaving and eventually went off to college. Life was normal, though I never stopped thinking about my Dad. Like, really. Even when I thought I came to terms with it, I'd get the urge to Google his name or search for him on social media, but nothing ever turned up. That's why when he finally did message me, it came to a complete surprise. I was at work, messing around my phone, while I had reports to write when it popped up on the screen. Is this David Lewis from Topeka? And your mom's name is Penelope? If so, this is your father. I've been trying to get in contact with you. I sat and stared at the message in disbelief. I set the phone down and then picked it up again with the message. While I was processing everything, more messages appeared. David, I'm so sorry for everything. For these years I stayed away. I really need you to answer me. I need you to agree to come meet me. My first instinct wasn't to reply. I was half convinced this was some kind of scam. Someone knew about my past and they were going to ask for a Venmo or money transfer. I finally replied, how do I know this is really my father and not some kind of scam? I waited for a reply. My heart was pounding and a rush of thoughts were going through my head. If this was really my dad, I had lots of things to say to him. Most of them weren't good. I promised him your dad. When you were a kid, you had a ginger cat named Polka that died when you were 3. You had a stuffed teddy bear that you slept with every night whose name was Mr. Simon. Please, David, this is really me, and I need you to agree to come meet with me. I stared at my phone and I was tracking my brain, trying to think of what to say. Tell him off? Tell him I'd gladly meet him because I'd missed him for all these years? I didn't either. I need some time to process this. Let me write you back after later this evening. I'm at work and I need to focus. On the phone, I waited for his reply. It came quickly. I understand, but please, I need an answer by tonight. Going back to my desk to work on the reports that was almost surreal. It was like I was a ghost in my own body. I did not get everything done though. It came it gave me something to focus on. Once I was home, I went straight to the bedroom and flopped on the bed, phone in hand. My fiance wasn't home yet. Today was her big day. At works, of all the people I wanted to ask and talk to the most, it was her. But she wouldn't be able to answer, even if I did call. I read over the messages again. Honestly, I didn't have to reply at all. Block him. Let him sit around and wonder what he did wrong to make me abandon him. But I did message back. Curiosity was too much. Why do you even want to meet with me? If there's anything you want to say, just type it here. His reply was almost immediate. David, I'm so glad you wrote back. I was afraid I had lost you. Trust me, I need to see you in person. If you never want to see or speak with me after that, I promise I'll never reach out to you again. I laid the phone down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. This was too surreal for me. The front door opened. Alicia walked in. I'm home, she called out. She walked into the bedroom when she couldn't find me in the living room. She looked down at me and furrowed her brow. You okay? Did something happen? She asked concerned. I shook my head and held up my phone. My dad just messaged me. He wants to meet me tonight to talk in person. I don't know if I should agree to go or not. I explained holding the phone to her so she could read from what he wrote for herself. Her eyes went wide. Of all the things I could have told her, this didn't seem to be the one that she expected. She took the phone and read over the messages. What do you want to do, babe? I know he's your dad, but he's essentially a stranger. You don't owe him anything. You still don't have to meet him. Alicia assured me, holding my hand. I think I want to meet him. Even if it's just to find out why he left, I want to hear it from him. I said, squeezing her hand. I turned back to the phone and typed out the message. Where do you want to meet? Send me the address. I respond. Thank you so much, David. This means everything to me. I'm sending the address now. The hell? I was only mildly surprised when the address he sent to me was only 30 minutes away from our apartment. I looked it up on Google Maps and it showed a tiny cabin out in the woods. I felt a stab of anger from knowing he was this close to me and was only now reaching out to me. How long had he lived there? Years? Months? I would find out soon enough. Alicia insisted on coming with me, but I convinced her to stay at home. She had the address where I would be, and if she didn't hear from me in 2 hours, she would call me. And if she didn't hear from me, she'd call the cops. She wasn't convinced yet. This wasn't some elaborate scam. Sorry, my throat got dry. I attended everything on the drive out to my dad's place. When I arrived, I felt a pang of anger at the house. It was a lovely little log. I knew enough about the area to know that it wasn't cheap, and I wondered what he had been doing all this time to afford such a nice place. Not paying child support, that's for sure. The car had barely come to a halt before the door opened and a man opened the door and awkwardly walked up to the driver window. "David," the man said, breathless. A small smile on my face. It was my dad. Now that he was here in the flesh, it didn't feel real at all. He looked haggard and thinner than his photos had let on. I stepped out of the car and we backed away a little. And come out. The smile, a small smile still on his face. Everything I had planned to say vanished from my head as he gestured towards the house. "Come in. Let's get you inside. I have a lot to explain before it's time." He started moving to the cabin, not looking back to see if I was following. I followed. I started at the back of my head, glaring. He didn't try to hug me or touch me in any way, for which I was glad, but I was also disappointed that he hadn't tried. The inside was nice, minimally, but tastefully decorated. It had a woman's touch, as Alicia would like to say. Maybe he had a girlfriend or even a wife. "Mom, we're married. His name is Steve. He's a great guy," I blurted out. My dad turned to look at me. The smile fell from his face and his eyes dropped. "I know. I saw that on social media. She looks happy," he said softly. I shrugged. I had said I had said that to hurt him, but now all I do is make him feel a little guilty. "Why did you ask me to come out here? After all this time, I just want to know if you're going to ask about getting a kidney or money you want for you to forget." I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. I wanted to play cool and collective, but I was too frazzled. He stared at me. His eyes were watery, as if he was fighting back tears. He seemed at lost for words. I shifted awkwardly on the couch, averting my eyes. "I just needed to see you. I want to explain why I left. I'm not going to ask for forgiveness, but I do want you to understand why I did what I did," said in a rush. I looked up at him. The obvious answer was there. It had been another woman, or maybe some kind of debt to the mafia. Anything really, but now I was about to learn the reason. All I felt was a slow, simmering anger. No matter what excuse he gave me, it wouldn't be good enough. I'm a werewolf. Hmm? I'm sorry? Hold on. That caught me off guard. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, that's great. Sorry. Sorry, I'm sorry. I find things like that funny. I'm sorry. It's amazing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to sound rude. But I suppose that's straight to the point. I'll give it that. "I'm a werewolf," he said simply, spreading his arms in a gesture of resignification. I had to admit that all the things I thought he might say was not one of them. "I see," I said slowly. He was mentally ill. Maybe he was schizophrenic, or some kind of mental break. "Look, if you brought me all the way out here so you could spin some kind of fairy tale about why you left to save it. I can tell you're doing well for yourself. There's no need to lie to me. I gestured angrily around the cabin. His eyes followed my hand as I pointed to our surroundings, and a tiny small frown formed on his lips. Oh, this isn't my house, David. The people who live here are on vacation, and I broke in. But I needed a quiet place to talk. He explained, stepping closer. I stood up and stepped away, moving closer to the door. Are you serious? Do you have any idea how much trouble you'd be if you're caught? You go to jail for stuff like this. I stammered. This wasn't going how I thought it would at all. I was wishing it was a scammer. I would have been less heartbreaking. He moved towards me. He lifted his shirt, and that's where I saw he had a gun holster in his belt with a small pistol housed in it. In smooth motion, he lifted out the gun and held it out to me. It's not real. It's not very real. I need you to do one thing for me. In all these years I've been away, I've done nothing but try to find a cure for this. To end it, to cure it, it doesn't matter. All I could find was this. The only thing that could truly stop me is silver. I have this thing loaded with silver bullets. It had to be done by someone who loves the afflicted. Otherwise it won't work. Trust me. I've tried the alternatives. His eyes were dripping in tears as he thrust the revolver into my hands. I stared at it, dumbfounded. Dad, this is insane. You're insane. You need to go to a hospital. I stared in shock at the gun. I'd never seen or held one before. It must be done by someone who loves me. My parents are dead. I know your mom doesn't love me. It must be you. You're all I have. Gulped as he spoke. I held out the gun to him. He stepped away and walked towards the door, blocking the exit. Look, we don't have much time. Once night falls, this will happen quickly, and you should know I don't have control over myself. When the change comes, I've killed people without even remembering it. You won't be any different, even if you're my son. He gulped again, the color draining from his face. I took a step back from him on reflex, clutching the gun to my chest protectively. I didn't want to give it up anymore. I didn't believe for a second that he was a werewolf, but giving me a gun seemed like a bad idea. It's time to go outside now. No reason to ruin this nice house, he huffed. His breath was coming faster, like he had just run a mile. His face was already pale, was talking in an alarmingly waxy texture. Like that was making my stomach turn. I had no idea if he was having a stroke, but he suddenly didn't look good. He stumbled outside and I followed him, not knowing what to do. I glanced at my car. I could run to it and leave, take the gun with me, and call an ambulance for him. Don't even think about trying to make it to the car. You won't have time anyways. He looked up as the last rays of daylight vanished over the horizon. It's happening. Give me, David. Please know I always loved you. I hope you still love me. He rasped as he doubled over, seemingly in pain. Dad? Taking a few steps towards him. No! Holding his hand out and backing away before he fell to the ground and started convulsing. It happened instantaneously. In the movies I'd watch about werewolves' transformation, it was always drawn out, painful and dramatic, but this wasn't. His skin split open like it wasn't even skin anymore. It parted like his flesh was made of paper or paper mache. My vision blurred as it took everything. The beast rising from the shed of his skin, the clothes, and looking at me. His eyes were vicious amber, glowing and filled with pure malevolence. There was nothing inhuman about it. We stared at each other for just a few seconds before it took a leap towards me, closing the distance between us in a split second. I shrieked and brought up my arms. The one with the gun. The creature was close enough for me to touch it. I could smell the wet animal smell of its fur as it reached out towards me. I fired the gun on instinct. I fired twice, one bullet hitting the thing on its cheek, the second one in its chest, where the heart should be. The beast let out a almost dainty and human-sounding gasp as it collapsed sideways. It looked surprised as it hit the dirt. I dropped my gun, my fingers numb from shock, and I ran to my car. I started the car and peeled out of the driveway. The headlights briefly illuminated the thing's body before I drove away. It hadn't moved. The shock hit me as if I was driving, and I struggled to keep myself on the road. I kept looking at the rearview mirror, expecting to see the thing chasing me down, but there was only darkness behind me. I didn't call the cops or any ambulance. I cried silently the whole way home. There was nothing I could tell anyone that could make any sense of anything. Alicia had waited for me up for me. And when I burst in the front door, she gasped and asked me what had happened. I couldn't tell her the truth. I made up the lie on the spot that I had met my dad and he was a drug addict asking for money, and that the cabin wasn't even the place he'd broken into. I had to talk her out of calling the cops. There was no way I could ever explain why there was a dead lycanthrope in the driveway. She stayed up with me until exhaustion finally took her, and she passed out on the couch. I stayed awake though. There was no way I could sleep. I sat in the dark sipping coffee and shaking when the first rays of light peeked through the blinds. I let out a sigh of relief. The sunlight brought sanity with it. I could start trying to convince myself that I had hallucinated this whole night. That's when my phone buzzed and I reflectively looked at the message that popped up on the screen. My heart dropped. It was a single sentence. David, it didn't work. Okay, that's a... Oh, I can't even upvote it. Ah, not fair. I wanted to upvote it. Ah. Hmm. We have a new story. Not really a new story, but another story. Again, please check out the streams so you can actually see the links to the stories. As most of the streams usually just get uploaded from Twitch automatically to YouTube. So I can't really edit them. So, now I'm curious now. What is my CPU saying? Wait, take a quick little break. Relax. Sit down. Enjoy yourself. Oh, my CPU is at 100% again. Oh, that's not okay. What is it with the browser that keeps saying browser page? No, it's the profile. I gotta get it. How do I upgrade my CPU? No, we're gonna take a quick detour because I'm getting annoyed with that. Whenever it reaches 100%, it does usually mean the stream ends. So I end that. I'm gonna end this conversation here. To upgrade a CPU. I'm curious. Ah. Okay. Just getting a better one, more up to date. Very well. I'm gonna do that. I'll look at it later tonight. Well, I can't really do it tonight. Probably will, actually. I'm gonna make a note of such a thing to get a better CPU and figure out how to upgrade this thing. Slowly, surely, we'll be upgrading parts of this computer. If I can get the new CPU upgraded and get a good one, then that would mean that I can stream more often. But at that point, might as well just save up for a better computer then. I'll figure something out. Have you heard this story? I moved into a haunted house for all the wrong reasons. Wasn't our session asleep? And this is the one that we posted in the chat bed. The thought of moving into a haunted house was exciting for me. I didn't really believe in the paranormal, but I also did not believe in it, if that makes sense. I'm in my mid-30s, single, and even though I always imagined one day settling down with a wife and dog and a white picket fence, none of that seemed to be happening. Why did I just get cold? Sir? I'm... Why did I get cold? How hot is it where I live? Hold on. 63. Why is it cold? It's not cold. Cold's like 32. I'm in the desert. Why are you saying 63? Okay. My apologies. Sorry. I'm very confused about that. So I'm curious, what if I do this? Docs chat. I could just do it on my phone, actually. Is there anything to get my CPU to stop stressing? Sorry, we're gonna take a quick little detour. The CPU reaching at 100% is concerning me. Give me one. I don't have Twitch on my phone, I do not. We're gonna quickly take a detour. Alright, I could just do... Instead of getting the live stream information, create a dashboard. Stream manager. And there we go. There we go. Alright. Let's start this over. CPU, yeah, 99, 98. Okay, yeah, that helped a little bit. Have you heard this story? I moved into a haunted house for all the wrong reasons. I thought the thought of moving into a haunted house was exciting to me. It was exciting for me. I didn't really believe in the paranormal, but I also did not believe in it, if that makes sense. I'm in my mid-30s, single, and even though I always imagined one day settling down with a wife and a dog and a white picketed fence, none of that seemed to be happening. I'm not the most handsome guy, and combined with being a little socially awkward, I realized that was more realistic to get a house first than a partner. It's not big either. It's 1,200 square feet with a tiny backyard, and the neighbors are so close I can almost reach out and touch their house without leaving my yard. But it was mine. It was a long house, a shotgun style house. I think they're called. I think. The previous owner had bought it for the intention of flipping it. They had only done half the work, stopping midway through renovation and selling it at a loss. It was the fault of the ghost, apparently. The outside was beautiful. The The siding was all new, a dark hunter green with bright yellow door. The felt both cheerful and welcoming. The landscaping was simple but well done. Once you got into the house, you could see where the renovation stopped. Some walls were painted and some were not. The kitchen was untouched and didn't look like it had been updated since the 70s. The one bathroom and master bedroom was completely redone and looked great. It was all I needed. I was certain that I could update the kitchen later if I wanted to. If the stove and fridge worked, I didn't really care what it looked like. I was the first of my siblings to purchase a house, and my mom was thrilled at first when I told her when she first came to visit. She seemed less than impressed. Her face dropped as she walked into the home for the first time. Oh, James, this place is only half done and it's so small. As she looked around, my mood dropped when she said that, though I try not to let it show. It's all I need, Mom. I'm a single guy. I don't have a dog yet. Besides, who's all I can afford? What's so expensive around here? My mom shook her head and kept frowning. But honey, if you get married, there won't be enough room for the both of you and your children. She said sadly. After Mom left that day, I tried to raise my spirits. My mom was always like that, and I should have prepared myself emotionally before she came over. I ended up ordering a pizza and settling down for some gaming with some friends. Most of my friends live in other states and even other countries, but we're all gamers, so we had that to connect us. I'd been showing them all pictures and videos of my home throughout the day, and at least they were impressed. Dang, dude, I'm like an official adult now. My friend Yuri chipped over the headset. My mood lifted with that. At least my friends could appreciate my new place. Thanks, man. Though, I hate to tell you, I've been an adult since I was 18, I snapped back. On the screen, I could see him shrug. If you say so, man. I know I didn't think of you as an adult until now. I laughed. On the monitor, I could see my other friend rolling his eyes at Yuri. Or they were just focusing on the game. There were 6 of us total. Me, Yuri, Robert, Cheryl, Sadi, and Travis. A pretty full game night. A few of my friends were married and had kids, so it was rare that they could ever have enough time to join in a game session. I was finally settling into the game in between bites of my dinner when my friend, I just read this. Cheryl? Cheryl. My apologies. My friend Cheryl caught my attention through the headset. Hey, James, is there anyone with you right now? She asked. Yeah, all of you guys, I said as I sipped my beer. No, I mean in the house with you right now. Didn't you say your mom left? I just saw someone walk past your doorway. She sounded concerned. I glanced down at her face in the monitor. She was staring intently at me with her controller down by her side. I turned in my chair and looked behind me. There was nothing in the hallway. My mom had been gone for hours, and I absolutely lived alone. Turning back, I shrugged. Did you see a shadow or something, Joe? There's no one here except for me. I tried my best to reassure her. Could you just go check? I swear to you, someone just walked past your doorway. She sounded worried now. Mentally, I rolled my eyes, but I smiled at her and nodded. Okay, I'll just go check. Maybe it's the ghost after all. I said, trying to lighten the mood. Or maybe it's just an old-fashioned burglar coming to steal your old Atari system and moldy pizza boxes. Robert pecked over the headset. Robert, I'm being serious right now. I know someone walked past that door. He'll hiss at me. Do you need us to have 911 on standby? Sadi asked. You're all the way in Kansas City, Sadi. I don't think they'll reach me in time. Just yell if you need us. We'll come running. Travis chimed in. I love my friends. I really did. But if someone was really in my house and I was about to be murdered, they'd probably regret these jokes later. I stood up and poked my head into the hallway. Nothing. I walked to the master bedroom. Also nothing. The same for the kitchen and bathroom and living room. Say what you want about small houses, but they're absolutely no place for a serial killer to hide or burglar to hide anyone. When I came back to the second bed, when I came back into the second bedroom, all my friends were waiting for an update. I shrugged before sitting down and putting the headset back on. There's nothing there. Maybe the hallway lights or something caused a weird shadow, but I'm all alone in here. I told everyone. Cheryl still didn't look convinced, but everyone else accepted it. We kept gaming, and everyone with kids or spouses started setting off as the hours passed, until it was just me and Yuri gaming well past midnight. But it's 1 a.m. But as 1 a.m. got closer, even he was ready to call it a night. He lived on the East Coast, so it was even later in the evening for him. I'll talk to you later. The Sandman is finally calling me to bed. Ugh. He yawned over the headset. Same here. It was a good time. The best way to break in a new house is a good gaming session. I yawned back. He laughed and signed off, and I stood up with a groan. I was stiff from all the sitting. At least tomorrow was Saturday, so I could sleep in and then get busy with putting everything away. This will be my first full night in my new home. I was excited, but also felt a little nervous. In a new place, the creaks and groans of all the new house weren't familiar yet. I hadn't done enough to the place to make it feel like home yet. It almost felt like I was staying at an Airbnb instead of something I'd bought and paid for. My bed was set up, but I hadn't put the sheets on it yet. And I wasn't going to either. No one was going to judge me except the ghosts, if there were any. I spread out the blanket to cover the bare mattress and pulled a knitted blanket on top of me. This would be just fine till morning. I had my phone in my bed with me, and even though I was exhausted, I couldn't resist some mindless scrolling till sleep finally took me. I felt my eyes closing. It was a relaxing feeling. That need of sleep pulling you down till you couldn't ignore it anymore. As I set my phone down, a flash of movement in the door caught my eye. It was low to the ground and dark. My heart started pounding as a small burst of adrenaline hit my system. I knew I was half asleep, but I hadn't looked here. But I hadn't looked like here, as if someone was peeking out from me from the hallway, with their head to the ground and then suddenly jerked out of sight. I pushed myself out of bed and cautiously peered into the hallway. I had my phone in my hand, ringing it back as if it were used as a to bludgeon someone. A stupid idea. It wouldn't be a good weapon. Plus, I'd break my phone when I needed it the most. Reaching around the door frame, I flicked on the hallway light. There was nothing. I stepped into the hallway and closed the bedroom door behind me. I didn't want anything sneaking into my bedroom with my back turned. If anything was there, the second bedroom I used as my game room was closed, and I knew nothing was in there. I would have heard the door open and closing. The doors and windows were locked. Nothing in the kitchen or living room. The bathroom was... Oh, check my party ended. uh, where was I? My apologies. The doors and windows were locked. Nothing in the kitchen or living room. The bathroom was also clear. I felt myself relax as I realized I was alone. But I still felt like I saw something. Maybe it was a rat. There were rodents of that size running around my house, possibly chewing through cables and my trunks. Didn't make me feel any better. When I went back to bed, I closed the door behind me and locked it. Probably not necessary, but it made me feel better at least. At the very least. It would be a deterrent to rats. I was asleep as soon as I hit the bed. Then when I got up the next morning, I found out I had slept in more than I intended. Not that it mattered. I had the whole day to do whatever I wanted. A nice breakfast and 2 cups of coffee later, I was ready to get started. Luckily, I didn't have much in the way of possessions. I had an extensive game collection of memorabilia, but beyond that, my home was a bachelor pad. It made setting something up easy though. It made setting everything up easy though. By 5 p.m. the day, I felt satisfied with everything. All I had to do now was get used to my new home. I sat on the couch and turned on the TV. After close to an hour of YouTube, I realized I was bored and restless. Now was as good a time as any to get out and explore the neighborhood. I looked at the house behind and picked a random direction to walk in. It was a good-sized neighborhood. All the houses were old and smaller than the ones you see in the suburb. Some looked like they hadn't been updated in decades, looked lived in, loved others, and had new sliding, had an air or modern air that made me think they'd been bought and flipped like my house had. The walk was therapeutic. I should make this a daily habit, I thought to myself. Getting out of the house away from the electronics was a good way to detox. Hello? A small quiet voice spoke behind me, beside me, and I jumped. I looked around, my eyes finally settling on an old woman sitting on a metal folding chair in her front yard. She looked up at me, smiling and offering a slight wave. Beside her, an old dog, intermediate breed, slept beside her in the sun. Hello, she said again, slightly louder, as if she was afraid if I hadn't heard her the first time. Hello, I said back, perhaps with a little too much enthusiasm. She had startled me, but I felt like I should still be polite. I'm sorry. You just moved in, didn't you? To that greenhouse down the street? It used to be white, she said matter of factly. Uh-huh, I nodded back. I felt my mood drop. I like old ladies as much as the next person, but that didn't mean I wanted to sit and talk to her. Old ladies tend to ramble. She nodded slightly while reaching down and giving her dog a gentle pat. He didn't wake up, but it stirred in his sleep. Be careful in that house. It's had a lot of owners over the years. Not many people stay for long. There was a lady murdered in it in the 70s. It doesn't seem that long to me, but I bet you weren't even born yet. She chuckled. Uh-huh, I said non-committally, slowly edging away from her. I knew it. She was a rambling old lady, and I was about to get sucked into a long conversation I didn't ask for. I already knew the place was haunted, supposedly it was, anyways. I knew her, the lady who was murdered. My husband and I moved into this house when we were in our 30s. It was our dream house, I remember, Nancy. She was a sweet girl. Her husband was a monster, though. But back then you could never have intervened with those things. It wasn't your place, she said softly. Ah, I said again, though I stopped backing away. I could spare a few minutes if he was going to give me the gory backstory of the house I lived in. He killed her one night, bashed her head in. He was jealous, said she was trying to sneak out of the house, trying to leave him. Well, if that was true, I wouldn't blame her. The old woman sniffed and wiped her nose. I stood there waiting for her to keep going, but she seemed to have been lost in thought. Either that, or she was having a senior moment. I cleared my throat, trying to get her attention. Sorry, dear, I was lost in my memories. I'm Deborah, by the way. Lovely to meet you. You should keep on with your walk, don't mind me. I tend to ramble sometimes. She waved her hand as if dismissing me. I smiled at her and waved as I walked away, though I kept glancing back at Deborah. She seemed happy, just sitting there in her chair in the front yard. I wondered if she talked to anyone who walked by. If she did, I'd have to make sure not to walk past her house again. The rest of my walk was uneventful. I even took the time to stop at the local coffee shop and had an iced tea before walking back home. Except for the weird encounter with the old lady, it had been a pleasant time. It was getting dark by the time I made it back home. I had stayed out longer than I intended, and I had almost gotten lost several times. If I was going to take daily walks, I would have to get better at finding my way home. Walking my house. It was dark, and I hesitated at the entrance. I could have sworn I left the table side lamp on at least. I hate walking to a dark house, so I always leave at least one light on. But it was off. I shrugged. Maybe I was misremembering. There wasn't much to do for the evening. It was just a matter of making myself some dinner and either watching a movie or playing a video game. I decided on leftovers. Some good old solo gaming time. I had plenty of games I had been meaning to start. I was warming up the pizza in the microwave with my back to the living room when the TV suddenly switched on. It wasn't loud, but the sudden noise was enough to make me gasp and whirl around. It switched on to the local news channel. I stared at it for a few seconds before going over to turn it off. Then I turned it back on and selected Netflix. A movie sounded better than with dinner, anyways. I did check the cables in the back of the TV to see if anything had become loose, and the batteries were good on the remote and hadn't fallen off the table, which might have explained why it switched on. When I sat down to eat dinner, I was a little unsettled. The thought of the ghost was getting to me, and I didn't even really believe in the supernatural. Maybe I needed to get my house tested for right on. The evening passed quickly enough. No one else was able to game that night. I just mindlessly watched Netflix and messed around on my phone till it was midnight again. Another exciting evening in my new home in the back. The night I jolted awake, I had been fast asleep. I hadn't remembered falling asleep. My phone was in my hand, still playing a relaxing rain sound playlist from Spotify. I lay there for a few moments trying to understand what woke me up. And that's when I heard it. A soft but unmistakable sound of something being dragged down the hallway. I sat upright, staring at the bedroom. I had closed it and locked it again. Safety against any rats that might try to sneak in. But I'm conscious the sound was there, steady, obvious. It was slowly making its way down the length of the hallway, into the living room. There was no way I could blame this on a dream. And if it was a rat, it was the size of a dog, in which case I was terrified to find out that it was dragging down the length of my house. My heart was pounding with the adrenaline that was being pumped into it. I sat there, minutes passed as I listened to whatever it was dragging itself all over my house. I didn't jump up to investigate like I did yesterday. This time I was genuinely afraid. And just as suddenly as the sound it stopped. And still I sat there listening to the silence. In some ways, it was worse because now I had no idea where the hell this thing was. Another minute passed before I worked up the courage to go to the door, opened it, and peered into the hallway. It was empty. I did another quick check of the house. It was all empty. Doors and windows all locked tight. Going back to the bed was hard. I thought about staying up watching TV, but quickly dismissed the idea. I'd rather be safe in my locked bedroom than exposed in the living room. I grabbed my laptop and watched YouTube while sitting on my bed. It felt safer, having some kind of noise in the room with me. I did fall asleep, but only when the light of dawn was peeking over the horizon. I heard birds chirping. I sighed and closed the laptop and passed out. When I woke up again, it was well past noon, and I was starving. I also felt sheepish in the light of the day. The noises I heard last night seemed childish. It had to be rats. I had seen something the previous night, and I needed to do an adult thing and call an exterminator. Walking into the kitchen to make some food, I bruised myself when with looking up the local exterminators, and I looked up homemade rat traps and natural deterrents. Maybe I should try to rid some of the things on my own before calling in the professionals. The food and coffee helped, though I had no idea what to do today except set up some homemade rat traps. I did give my new home a good cleaning, mostly because I wanted to look for any signs of elusive rodents. There was no droppings, no holes in the walls or ceiling, nothing that would indicate their presence. I started Googling and tried to test for rodon. But after all that, I just sat on my sofa and tried to think. Between the stress of moving, getting used to a new place, and all the worry about rodent infestation and ghosts, maybe I was called out. Are there any ghosts I called out? Is there any ghosts in here? I called out, surprising myself. I really hadn't meant to speak. It's just kind of a burst of mine. The sound of my own voice startled me. It hung in the air. I hadn't spoken to anyone or even heard my own voice since I spoke to the old woman the other day. I hadn't realized how quiet it was until the silence had been disturbed. If there's ghosts here, sorry you died? I stammered. But if you are here and you're making those noises, could you please stop? I'd like us to live together in peace. Neither of us can go anywhere. So, we're kind of stuck together. I explained to the probably non existent ghost. I know your name is Nancy. I talked to Deborah. She was your neighbor while you were alive? Sam again, feeling cringe-worthy. If you don't bother me, I won't bother you. We can find a way to live together. I've always been good with roommates. I was silent, sat there for a minute, my ears straining to hear anything. I wasn't sure what I was even listening for an actual answer. If if I were to hear a disembodied voice, I'd run out of the house, but there was just silence. I took that as an answer. Alright, well, I'm glad we could talk about it, said to the empty space. Okay. I rubbed my eyes with the palms of my hand. Well, I said it, feeling like a complete idiot. But I did feel better, all things considered. The rest of the day and night were quiet and uneventful. The weeks passed in peace, the next I won't lie. I half believed that addressing the ghost helped. The rational side of me most just thought the giant rat that lived in my house had finally found a way out. Either way, the silence at night was heavenly. A month had passed in sweet silence. The only sounds in the house were the ones that I was making. I had gone on more walks, avoided Deborah, and had plenty of time and game with friends when they had time to do it. I really felt like I was needing this whole adult living in my own home thing until the night the sound started up again. A crash woke me up. I sat bolt up in bed and stared at the open door. I had stopped closing it and locking it at night. A week ago, from the living room, I heard another crash. The sound of obvious footsteps could be heard in the living room. My heart was pounding. This wasn't like last time. This was very obvious. A person walking around home. I reached for my phone and touched the screen. It was dead. A bolt of fear ran through me. Of all times, this thing had been dead. It would be happening tonight. I could hear the footsteps in the living room. When I heard a voice beside me. Don't touch the phone. Leave it right there. Oh, don't touch the phone. Leave it right there. A deep male voice said from somewhere beside me. The adrenaline that flooded my system at that moment hit me so hard. It made me lightheaded, and I jolted from bed and ran for the door. Maybe I could make it outside. Someone slammed into me from behind, and I fell to the hallway floor with a loud oomph as the wind was knocked out of me. I lay there stunned as whoever hit me stayed on my back and placed his hand on head, pressing my face into the hardwood. Stay down, just stay down. His voice hissed into my ear. His breath smelled foul, and if I could have turned my head, I would have. There was someone here? I thought you said no one was home. Wait, hold on. There's someone here? I thought you said there was no one home. The voice said from the living room. I could hear footsteps approaching, even though I couldn't turn my head. I thought there was no one home. The lights were off, and there was no car in the driveway. The voice holding me down said. I felt the urge to yell out that they should have checked the garage for a car, but decided that I shouldn't antagonize the burglars. Go check his room for a wallet. And the voice behind me hissed. I managed to turn my head slightly so I could see the man in the living room out of the corner of my eye. He was wearing a dark and filthy hoodie, with the equally filthy bandana covering his mouth. His eyes, they were the only thing visible, were wide with fear. As I lay sputtered on the floor, I saw him snap around and face the living room again. What was that? The guy asked, backing further into the hallway. What do you mean? What is it? The man holding me said, his grip tightened on my hair, and I fought down the urge to yelp. I hear something. Someone else is in here with us. He shot back, looking from me to his friend and back again to the living room. That's when I heard it. The same shuffling sound that I heard for weeks, as if something was being dragged along the floor. This time I heard grunting too. as if someone was more exerting themselves with their movements. My heart leapt again. I could hear what it was getting closer, the moving into the light. It was a head, thick and dark hair, covered a skull that was only half there. If I looked closer, I could see what looked like brain matter or coagulated blood glinting in the light from the cave of the cranium. My stomach heaved at the sight of it. The head moved further into the light, and I could see it was attached to a body, a woman. Her dress, I could tell that the color had been originated. It was so caked up in blood it was impossible to tell. Her eyes rolled to the back of her sockets, and she looked up at the burglars. They were bloodshot, but I could not tell that they were brown. I could see the hurt and fear in them. In anger, her jaw was dislocated, but still managed to squeal. It was as if she was trying to talk or scream. I couldn't tell, and honestly, it didn't matter. The man holding me down finally let me go and jumped back. He let out a low scream, as there was no breath in his lungs, and he still tried to make a sound. I took the opportunity and pushed myself towards the hallway walls, as far from the apprehension and the men as I was able to get. I looked up. His face was covered too, but his eyes were uncovered, wide in shock. The smaller man who had been in the living room was slowly backing up and backing down into the hallway. He was letting out a series of high-pitched screams before he finally turned and bolted, heading straight towards the back door. The other burglar right behind him. I heard the door slam, and as the glass rattled in its frame, the door hit the side of the house before swinging back shut with a clang. I breathed a sigh of relief when he left. Then I snapped my head back to the hallway towards the living room to look for the woman. There was no one there then. I lay there, my head reeling and trying to clench my breath. I pushed myself up and to my feet. I ran to the back door and made sure it was closed and locked. I slid the deadbolt in place and looked back at the living room. Still nothing. I blinked and rubbed my head. A conscious. It had to be a conscious. A concussion, my bad. It had to be a concussion. The guy stabbed me so hard. I had to be disoriented. I called the police in a daze and an ambulance for my head. I waited for them outside of my front porch in a fog. My eyes were turning to the living room to see if the entity would reappear. There was nothing there. It was deathly quiet, almost like it was waiting for something. Thank you, I muttered into the darkness of my house. I felt the energy shift then, as if whatever was there, whatever had helped me, was satisfied with my thanks. The police came in the ambulance. My neighbors, who had never met, came out of the house to stare and point. A few of them filled with their phones. I hoped not noting about tonight ended up on YouTube or TikTok. I did end up going to the hospital just to be safe. I'd call my mom and my brother and sisters just to let them know what was going on. My mom was hysterical, almost regretted calling her. But, it, if I didn't, I'd never hear the end of her asking why I didn't call her. I messaged my friends letting them know what had happened since none of them lived close. They sent flowers and video chatted. Yuri sent me a DoorDash, which legit made me tear up. Going back home from the house after the hospital was surreal. I hesitated slightly at the doorstep, wondering if I should have stopped at the church for holy water, but the house felt different. It felt lighter, but also expectant, like it was expected to see me. I took a few deep breaths and walked in. It didn't matter if this place was haunted or not. This wasn't the movies where you could just move away at the drop of a hat. I was stuck here. Besides, I still like my home. I sighed and stretched out my arms in resignation. I'm home, I said, feeling the tension leave my body. Welcome home, a tiny voice said from somewhere deep within the house. I chose to ignore it. That's a good one! That's my favorite one. The long one, too. Oh, I can't upvote it! Oh, you're joking with me. It's not fair. Oh, that's so not fair. Oh, I have to tell them. I have to tell them. Oh, that from this author, that is probably my favorite one so far. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love it. Oh, I'm quick to type. I must say, moving to a haunted house for all the wrong reasons is so. That's amazing. Oh, that's amazing. Still, though, no response on if Welcome to Odin as a part two. Ah, sorry, but that's satisfying. That's such a. Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Let me just quickly catch my breath because that was a long one too. Hmm. Okay, back my back. Actually, let me just quick posture check. That's why I should also come back to the stream. You could talk to me while we have little intermissions like this. Go stretch. Okay. 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 I can't leave you guys too. I can't leave you guys alone for too long. So I'm trying my best to make sure I'm fully. Trying to make sure I'm like fully calm again because that was my favorite one. I'm, like excited. Okay. Ah, I thought this was supposed to be horror. I still love it. I still love it. I thought that I didn't. I love it. Ah, may not be completely spooky scary, but the ghost was very handy. I thought it was good. Honestly, when it came to like the male voice, I thought it was the like a poltergeist of the husband, and he was about to be the next victim. Even in death, he still causes harm. But no, it was the girl. It was a lovely one. Ah, yeah, Nancy. Oh, let's see. This author writes many long ones. You know, that is to be expected when the author is called the not no the librarian chick. So it is to be expected, but I was not expecting this many long ones. It's rather fascinating. Okay. No, no. We have this one, which is very another long one, but I will read it. This one caught my attention. This is the one that's been poking at me, if you would. Just, I'm sorry. I kind of wanted to give you like the example. How loud was that? Very loud. Sorry. But this story, posted 4 years ago on our session of sleep. Tell me, have you heard the story? The cat killer on Brad Street. I always really liked my neighborhood. Brad Street, number 1287. It was the home my wife and I bought when we were expecting our first child. It was filled with small, single family homes, and all of them well maintained and loved. I lived in a cul de sac, bordering several acres of wooded, undeveloped land. It's a pretty spot, close to the heart of downtown, but I felt isolated thanks to the trees that surrounded us. I could walk out on my deck in the morning with my coffee and listen to the birds sing and the squirrels chitter. At night, there were always a plethora of alighting bugs that my kids loved to chase. It was a little tiny slice of suburban heaven. I even liked my neighbors. We would barbecues and babysat each other's kids like they did in the 1950s. One of our neighbors was Miss Willis. She had lived in her home for decades, and as far as I know, the neighborhood had grown up around her. Her home was an older Cape Cod style home, contrasted the modern looking homes in the neighborhood. I never knew her husband. He was dead long before we had moved in. She seemed to like having people around, and you could always find her on the front porch in the warm months, sipping her tea and sewing her quilts. She was just a master quilter. I had seen many of her pieces and was always amazed by the level of detail. I was always amazed by the level of detail. They resembled paintings more than cloth. She was famous in the community for them. Every year she would enter her quilts in the county fair or donate them in auctions to raise money for charitable causes. She was a lovely old lady, with frost white hair that she kept in a bun. She kept in a bun, who maintained the nicest garden in the block to raise money for charity. Uh, uh, there we go. She grew the nicest garden in the block. She grew flowers, vegetables, and even fruit from a cherry and apple tree that flourished in her front yard. She's always had her cats. Over the years, she's had dozens of furry companions, but none as large as her favorite cat, Diego. He was a massive cat with a glorious coat of long charcoal gray fur. I assumed he was a Maine Coon, but I never knew for sure. He had been often mistaken as a bobcat due to his size, but he was a sweetheart. Diego patrolled the neighborhood like an old world constable, walking leisurely up and down the street, sniffing the things that could be sniffed. The kids adored him and played with him like he was a dog. He was immensely patient and tolerant. Their hugs and kisses during the school year would wait with the children at the bus stop, assuming the role of the benevolent shepherd as he sat with the children. He liked our house second best to Mrs. Calder's. I think it was because our garden always received lots of sun throughout the day. Besides, I actually enjoyed seeing him sleeping amongst the hydrangeas and climbing our maple tree. I loved cats, but we wouldn't have one. My wife was allergic. I have many sweet memories of sipping coffee on our back porch with Diego purring beside me. One day, one of our elderly neighbors, Mr. Camorde, passed away next to Mrs. Golas. He had been in the neighborhood the longest. He had been in his late 80s and had been able to get out much due to arthritis had gotten worse with age. But he had always been happy to see us and waved to the children as they played. Even though he hadn't really been a friend to us, he had a fixture in our lives for over a decade, and his absence was jarring. The kids cried. They didn't know him very well either, but the sudden permanent change in their lives was upsetting to them. We all went to his funeral, which was sparsely attended, save for a few relatives and for the people from the neighborhood. He had outlived most of his family and friends. This was the first time we had gotten to meet Mr. Comody's grandson, Victor. He had several grandchildren and a great grandchild, but Victor was the one that stood out. He was tall and lean to the point of being gangly. He reminded me in passing of a scarecrow. He wore dress pants and faded plaid shirts that had seen better days. We only spoke to him briefly, just to give our condolences. He didn't take my hand when I offered it, and instead gave me a dull, almost uninterested look. I shrugged it off. He must have been tired and bereaved in the whole ordeal. 3 days later, I saw Victor again, this time in front of Mr. Commodi's house, with the beer in hand, even though it was barely 9 o'clock in the morning. He was supervising a moving crew who were busy josting furniture and boxes into the home. I was curious, so I walked over and waved, hoping to elicit a better response than the one I had received at the funeral. I could smell the alcohol and the stale cigarette smoke even several feet away from him. Victor regarded me with a cold hostility as he sipped out his beer. The air around him felt colder, and my smile slipped from my face. Hello! We met at your grandfather's funeral. I'm sorry that he's gone, and he was a great neighbor to all of us. I said, still trying to be friendly. Victor looked at me with an eye and shrugged. People die. He said with little inflection. He might as well made a comment on the weather. Ah. I coughed, clearing my throat as I tried to think of something else to say. I nodded at the house. So are you clearing out his things? He left me in the house. No one else wanted it. Everyone else lives in Florida and didn't want to be bothered with living in the Midwest. Victor suddenly spoke, surprisingly. Mentally, I cringed. If he was moving in, I wasn't thrilled. I already didn't like him, and our neighborhood had always been a pretty place to live. What is that? Victor spat, his eyes narrowing. He looked down behind me and saw something I couldn't see. I felt something slide past my legs, and I heard the loud purring before I could look down. I knew it was Diego coming to greet the new neighbor. Oh, this is Diego. He is Mrs. Screwless cat. He's a big fixture in the neighborhood. Bent down to give Diego a quick scratch behind his ear. Victor backed away and patiently spat at poor Diego, and practically spat at poor Diego. Cats are the vilest things on this earth, little demons with their little evil snake eyes. He spat as he spoke, spittled and beer leaving his mouth in a mist. I backed away, suddenly terrified of his outburst. He had gotten angry so quickly, and over a cat who wouldn't even hurt him. Diego's a sweetheart. He's like a puppy most of the time. The kids play with him. I tried to diffuse the situation. Victor was staring at this cat with such intense hatred it scared me. He took a last swig of his beer and downed it, and then tossed the empty can straight at Diego's head. It missed and hit me in the shin instead. Diego scampered off as I bent to rub him on my shin. What the hell, man? You hit me with that thing! I wish that I knew how to throw a punch, but at the moment, escalating the situation probably wouldn't have been a good idea. The little demons sent from hell, and I always knew it. Victor screeched, not even looking at me, but at the plain Diego. God, this dude Victor does not seem like a nice guy. I went back home and told my wife everything. She wanted to call the cops, but I wasn't sure that they could do anything. We both agreed that we should keep ourselves, our kids, and our dog away from Victor. If he was that violent with the cat, we had no idea how he could get with the kids. I sent texts to all our neighbors as well, explaining what happened. We didn't text Mrs. Scolas as she had a landline. I assured my wife I would talk to her as soon as I could. The next morning, we began finding the dead cats. It was laying dead in the middle of the road between my lawn and Mrs. Scolas' front porch. It was obvious that the poor feline had been run over. It was a smaller black cat that I didn't recognize. Mrs. Scolas was already out on the front porch, drinking a cup of herbal tea. She was staring forlornly at the deceased animal, and I walked up to her. Poor thing. She sniffed and wiped at her eyes. That foul man didn't even slow down when he was crossing the street. I didn't have to ask who she meant. I already knew. I comforted Mrs. Scolas as best as I could before I went to inspect the body of the cat. He had a collar and a name tag too, so I sent the owner a text saying that I found their cat. When they called back, they were crying, wondering what had happened to their furry friend. The cat's name was Felix, and he was an inside cat. He had gotten loose last night. I felt terrible explaining what happened to his owners. I left out the information about Victor. I couldn't prove that it was intentional, but maybe Victor hadn't seen the cat. They came to collect the body, and my wife kept the kids occupied out back while they did. They loved animals, and saying it would have only upset them. The next day, there was another dead cat, this time without a collar, and it was laying Mr. Hardin's driveway, almost like it had been placed there. Mr. Hardin found it and texted everyone, asking if anyone recognized the animal. No one did. We all assumed it was a stray. This one hadn't been run over, it had been drowned. Its poor body was bloated with oh goodness. Poor body was bloated with water. We didn't live near any large bodies of water, so I assumed it had been placed there from somewhere else. Could be that man named Victor, my wife accused. I didn't disagree with her, as I was assuming the same thing. It scared me. The man had only been moved in for 2 days, and we were finding dead animals in our road in our driveways. Wasn't animal cruelty a sign of sociopath? Most of the people in the cul-de-sac had kids and pets. Was this guy going to be a risk to everyone? My wife and I talked more, but weren't sure what to do. We couldn't prove anything, and the last thing we wanted to do was start tossing accusations. But we kept finding dead animals. It upset the kids greatly. They were usually the first ones up in the morning since they had to get ready for school, and if the body was laying in the street, they'd be the first to spot it. Usually it was cats. Some had collars, some didn't. But there were other animals too: birds, dogs, rabbits, even a rotting skunk was left on Mrs. Scotus's driveway, like a sick offering. I've never seen Miss Scotus angry, but as the weeks wore on, I can see the hatred glinting in her eyes every time Victor drove past in his car. He never came outside of his house. He had no idea what he did for a living. He had no idea what he did for a living either. The yard, once well maintained by the late Mr. Kamari, over his old age, became decrepit. He never mowed the yard, and he refused to help any help we offered. What was worse was the whole neighborhood a small, started to smell faintly of rotting animal. We could never find all the corpses, but we suspected they're coming from Victor's house. My wife was beyond stress. She was a stray at home mom, and when the kids were in school, she was a stay-at-home mom. When the kids were at school, she would maintain the house and create art to sell on Etsy. On nice days, she'd set out to work and let the dog run around in the backyard. She swore that Victor would always leer at her if she saw her outside alone, so she stopped going outside. She drove to a local park to walk her dog, when before she could walk him around the neighborhood. We installed one of those camera doorbells so we could have some kind of security. So far, he hadn't come to our property, and it helps ease my wife's mind. Everyone else hadn't been so lucky. The Vegan family, consisting of a single mom and two teenage girls, had told us that she caught Victor staring into her younger bedroom while she was getting dressed for school. Her house was right next to Victor, and the girl's bedroom window faced his house. She had confronted him, and the man had just laughed, saying he thought he dropped something and was looking for it. After that, she had the girls keep their windows blinds closed at all times. Through group chats and texting, we learned all of us were having run-ins with Victor. Our neighbors and the Nugans had reached out to Victor's family asking for information about him. All his family said was to keep their doors locked and their pets inside. Okay. All the family said was to keep their doors locked and their pets inside. They said that no one in the Kamadi family associated with him due to several incidents with from when he was a young man, but they refused to elaborate on what those incidents were. I was at a loss. I thought about threatening Victor. I thought about buying the house from him. I even thought of burning the place down when he went to work. None of these options would work. At least none that would end up with me in the jailhouse or the poorhouse. The breaking point came on a cool Sunday morning in August. I was making chocolate chip pancakes in the kitchen when I heard a loud wail from the outside. We all heard it and froze. The kids looked around quizzically, but my wife and I locked eyes as we realized the wailing was coming from Mrs. Corliss's house. I turned the burner of the stove off and looked outside. Mrs. Corliss was on the ground screaming. trailing something against her chest. It had seen I could see blood surrounding her. My mouth went dry. I thought she'd been hit with it by a car. Stay in the house, I shouted to Stay in the house. I shouted to my wife and kids as I ran outside in my pajamas, grabbing my phone on the way out. I ran to Mrs. Golis's with my heart thumping. She looked at me with tears filled her eyes, and I breathed a sigh of relief when I realized it was not her blood, but I gasped as soon as I realized whose blood it was. It was Diego. The sweet old cat was cradled against her chest, and he was obviously dead. A large wound on his side was evidence of what killed him. A trail of blood was on the asphalt, leading from the driveway of Victor Camardi to the arms of Miss Golis. Killed him! I know he killed him! He killed my sweet Diego! She rasped, her voice already harsh from crying. I teared up as well. Diego had been my friend. Behind me, I heard the door of my house open, and the voices of my children. Dad, what happened? My son called out. I placed myself between him and Mrs. Golis to spare him the sight, but it was too late. He'd seen it. All over the cul-de-sac, neighbors were exiting their front doors, peering behind curtains and running over their swift cell phones, in hand ready to call the police or fire department or whoever. I looked at the faces of my neighbors and we all must have been thinking the same thing. It was Victor. Victor had killed Diego. The blade shred was evidence enough. Mr. Roth, a large man in his 50s who lived next to Mrs. Scholes, stormed over to Victor's house and started beating on the door. His wife, Cynthia, jogged over with him, pleading for him to stop. Mark, can't provoke him. That cat has been stabbed and you're crazy if you're thinking that man won't stab you, won't stab at you too. She screamed at him, but he didn't stop. He banged at the door and shouted for Victor and yelled curses. The door never opened and Victor never appeared, not so much as a peek out of his window. Mrs. Scholes was still crying, but she turned to look at Victor's house, her eyes bloodshot from crying, took me on a fierce look I had never seen with my neighbors angry before. My wife knelt next to the elderly woman and gently placed her arm around her shoulders. I'm so sorry. If there's anything we can do, if there's anyone you'd like us to call. My wife asked tentatively with the voice of a mother. I need a blanket. I need something to wrap him up in. She looked up at me as she spoke. I immediately went back into our house, ushering my kids back into the home as I went. My son looked upset. My daughter was crying. I needed to comfort them, but at first I wanted to do what Miss Goldis had asked. I confiscated one of the old beach towels from for the duty of, and I took it to her. She took this. She took it with a small nod of thanks, and she wrapped up the body as gently as she could. Her movements were slow and purposeful, almost reverent. The cat had been her friend, companion, and confidant for many years. When she stood up with her cat carefully wrapped her, she let out a slight grunt of exertion. I moved to help her, but she shook her head. I can carry him. I need to do right by him. She rasped as she walked towards her house. Do you need help burying him? I have a shovel. I called after. She did not turn, but she spoke as she disappeared into her house. That won't be necessary, she said before the door closed behind her. We didn't see Mrs. Curtis for 3 days. The kids brought flowers and left them on her porch. My wife made her a casserole, and others also brought over baked goods. She never answered them. We knocked, so we left everything by her the front door. Later, we would see they were gone, so we knew she was at least receiving everything. That poor woman, my wife cheered up as she spoke. I know she must be lonely with her cat gone. We should invite her over for dinner. We tried, but the phone rang without anyone ever picking it up. Whatever grief Mrs. Goldis was experiencing, she wanted to be left alone. The death of Diego seemed to embolden Victor. We started to find pieces of cheese and meat with nails and tacks stuck in them in our backyard. It was sheer luck. It was sheer luck. My wife found them before our dog did. Our neighbors reported the same thing and started to install security cameras. But by this point, we had called the police, but there was nothing they could do. We had no footage of Victor entering our yard or witnesses disgusting. With the lack of help, I told my wife I was going to install outdoor cameras all over the house in hopes of catching him red-handed. We also started looking over other houses, and we weren't the only ones. The Nugans were looking too. It broke my heart because I loved our house. This guy was escalating, and I was at a loss. I had to protect my family somehow. On the third night after Diego's death, we started hearing the yowling. I sat bolt right up after in our bed when I heard it. Beside me, my wife was awake too, her eyes wide in the dim light. Durham, what's that? She whispered. I don't. I whispered back. Outside, the yowl continued unbattened. If anything, it was getting louder. It was like it wanted attention. Are you going to check it out? My wife whispered again. Honestly, I didn't want to leave the bed, but if the animal we're hearing was loud enough to wake us up, the kids might be awake too, terrified in their beds and too afraid to move. I crept from my bedroom as quietly as I could. I used the flashlight in my phone as I wouldn't disturb the kids if they weren't already awake by turning on the hall lights. I checked their rooms and somehow, thankfully, they were still asleep. My son was even snoring lightly, which would have been cute in different circumstances. Stepping inside, I could finally hear the direction it was coming from. It was coming from the path of the woods behind Victor's house. My neighbor, Mark Roth, was outside as well. He was in his pajamas and his robe, carrying a baseball bat and a flashlight. He caught my eye and we exchanged knowing glances. Across the cul-de-sac, most of the lights were on, and I could see our neighbors looking out of windows, trying to find the source of the sound. Even Victor's lights were on, which was unusual. Mr. Roth walked over and gestured with the baseball bat. I think it's coming from the woods behind Victor's house. I bet I bet you anything the sick monster has an animal stuck in a bear trap or something else wicked. He spat. That was something that I hadn't considered before. Something, but it sounded more like an enraged animal to me than an injured one. Then again, I'd never heard anything like this before. I don't know. Maybe just quickly get some water. Okay, there we go. Should we check it out? I asked Mark, feeling braver now that someone was with me, at least. Yeah, we should. Mark hissed. I'd love to catch that guy in the act so I can justify using this, he said, swinging the bat for emphasis. I wasn't sure what to say. I wanted this night to end without any kind of violence, even if it was against a crazy guy like Victor. We started our slow walk to the end of the cul-de-sac when the sound abruptly stopped, as if a switch had been flipped. Mark and I looked at each other, stunned by the sudden silence. Guess it ran off? I suggested quickly. Since there was no longer any yowling to investigate, we parted ways and went back home. I crept inside as quietly as I could, so I wouldn't wake the kids. I glanced in the rooms one more time to check on them. They were still sleeping. In our bedroom, my wife was wide-eyed and staring at me, her phone in hand. Did you find what it was? No. I almost called the cops, she whispered, setting down her phone. I'm not sure the cops would have come out to investigate a case of strange howling. I bet it was just a coyote in heat or something, I said, trying to reassure her, and almost convince myself even. We heard the yowling the next night and the night after that. You could almost set your watch by it. The inhuman screech was both punctual and terrifying. It eventually woke up our son, who came running into our bedroom, terrified. I didn't go outside, but from the window I saw Mark walking around with a flashlight in one hand and his bat in the other. Victor's lights were also on, even though I did not see him leave the house. I would always cease. It would always cease abruptly after 15 or 20 minutes, or almost after of continuous screeching. By the third night, it had woken up my daughter as well. The shrieks seemed louder and even more frenzied than the night I had with my whole family in tears. It scared my wife enough that she called the police. A patrol car did finally show up to patrol the area, but it was long after the sounds had stopped. The next morning, we all emerged from our houses feeling shell shocked. The kids had insisted on sleeping in our beds, and we didn't want to kick them out. Frankly, I felt safer having them close by. As I walked out of the mailbox to retrieve the morning paper, I saw Mrs. Rhoda sitting forlornly on her porch. It was the first time I'd seen her since Diego died. I walked over, waving my spirits raised at the sight of our beloved neighbor. My smile faltered as I got close and saw her disheveled appearance. She looked haggard and her white hair was down instead of its usual impeccable bun. Dark circles were under her eyes as if she hadn't slept in days, and her thin frame looked even thinner under her dress. Mrs. Scotus, we were getting worried about you. Now no one has seen you in 4 days. I gushed, stopping a few feet away. She looked over at Emmy slowly, as if her neck was sore. She offered she offered up a weak smile. So if I've made you any of you worried. I'd been busy. I was working on something special and I couldn't be away from it. Is it one of your quilts? I inquired, trying to keep the conversation up. She smiled slightly and nodded. Something like that. Mrs. Gordon stood up and suddenly turned towards her front door. If you'll excuse me. If not, I've not been feeling well, and I think I'll make some tea and lay down. I waved lamely as she went back into her house. I couldn't think of anything else to say. If my wife had been here, she would have asked if she needed some food or anything else, or invited her for dinner. With nothing left to do outside, I walked back to my home. I tried walking on some home repairs. I started working on some small home repairs, but I was distracted. My wife had sent the kids to her parents for the weekend, partially for us to have some time for ourselves, mostly for them to avoid the strange howling we were afraid of. We were afraid of. That would come again tonight. Do you think we should call animal control? My wife asked, looking at the window as evening fell. Our neighbors already did. I think there's something. I think they're coming to set traps or something, but no one in animal control is going to come out at midnight and wait for some weird animal to start howling. My wife kept glancing out the window as if she expected something to jump at her, jump out at her. Still, we managed to have a good evening. We ordered Chinese and ate it. While watching a movie in the evening, we sat outside and drank some wine. It was rare that we got a child-free evening, so we tried to enjoy it as much as possible. My wife fell asleep quite early, helped in no small part of the 5 glasses of wine she had consumed. I couldn't fall asleep even after drinking a couple of beers. If the howling started again, I knew it would wake me up right away. To pass the time, I fired up the PlayStation and enjoyed some solo game time. Something I usually don't get to do with the kids around. I kept glancing at the clock of midnight came and went without the ungodly screaming. I could finally get some sleep. I was looking forward to sleeping in without the kids bouncing on our bed asking for chocolate chip pancakes. As midnight crept closer, I shut everything down and dimmed the lights. Everything was eerily quiet. There was none of the unusual nighttime sounds. Even cars passing by sounded muffled. The air that night seemed expected, as if everything was waiting for midnight. I'm not sure why, but I went out the front door and stood on our porch. I kept the lights off and took a moment to enjoy the silence. It was nice. The stars were bright tonight. I found myself staring up at them, briefly wondering how much a good telescope would cost. The yelling started suddenly. It made me jump. Across the neighborhood, the lights stayed off. Either they were sitting in the dark like I was, or they were sleeping. I looked down the length of the neighborhood and saw the Victor's lights were on. His front door was wide open, too, yawning open like some surprised mouth. In the weeks that Victor had lived here, I hadn't seen the inside of his house. Even from the distance, I could see it was cluttered and unkept. Moving boxes still sat untouched. There was no sign of Victor. The hair on my arm stood at the end of the howl and continued. It sounded louder this time, more instant, maybe even desperate. Before I could think, I was running towards the sound of the open. I was running towards the sound of the open door of Victor's house. I wanted to finally see what this thing was. Drinking had embodied me. When before I had been cautious, no, I did stop long enough to grab a fallen tree branch off the ground. It was a foot long and several inches thick. It wasn't much, but it made me feel better armed with something. I approached Victor's door and peered inside. The smell of the place assaulted me, even a few feet away. The smell was acrid and stale, like unwashed bodies and cigarette smoke. Stepping away, I heard the animal scream again. It was closer. It sounded like a lot larger than it previously thought. Miss Vega's porch light turned on, and she must have been woken by the scream. I watched as Miss Vega stepped carefully out to the back door, wearing a robe and clutching herself on her own eyes wide open as she looked at me. Before I could say anything, there was another scream. This time human, coming from the wooded area behind the house. It sounded pained and terrified. I ran towards the sound, pointing at Mr. Vega as I yelled, "Call 911! I think Victor is being attacked." I ran past the house in the woods. The woods were not especially deep or thick, but the light that was coming from the house barely illuminated anything, and I mentally cursed myself. Cursed myself for not having my phone on me. I could use the flashlight. A bright flash and a loud bang came from deep amongst the trees, followed by another and another. My blood ran cold. There were gunshots. Victor was shooting at the animals or at me. I backed away and started to jog back to the street when something large ran into me, knocking me off the feet. I dropped the tree branch and rolled, letting out an as the air left my lungs. It was Victor. He'd been knocked off his feet too, and was on the ground next to me, staring past us in the woods, at the place where he'd been firing his gun. He was crab walking backwards, still on the ground, trying to get his feet under him. His face was bloodied and his shirt was torn. I stared at him, still stunned, when he let out the high-kneeing moan. He was scared. Victor looked at me, his eyes wide and bloodshot. They were terrified. I'd never seen anyone so terrified. "It's the devil! It's the devil!" he shrieked in a high-pitched wail. "It's coming for me! I shot it, but it keeps coming!" He yelps as he finally gets his feet under him and ran off into the darkness. I lay in the dark, still stunned. I was terrified Victor had gone off to get his gun and started firing again. Something leapt in front of me, and I tensed and covered my head, anticipating the madman and his rifle. But it wasn't Victor. The stench of this thing hit me before my eyes could fully process what we were seeing. It was an animal, but one that shouldn't have existed outside of a nightmare. It was rotting. Even as it stood in front of me, I could smell the chance of rolled off of it. The size of a large dog. It was mad amalgamation of different animal parts. It had been seemingly stitched together. The body was half dog, half deer, with rows of broken antlers, with mismatched bones and teeth on its back like a porcupine. It was a mad patchwork of skin and fur, sluggered off, even it stood in front of me. But my head was shocked. Was shocked. What shocked the breath from me? It was Diego. His head was sewn onto this thing. His face was comically small against the large body in which had been attached. He looked at me, his eyes deep in bloody crimson that glinted in the weak light. I saw no recognition in those eyes. He hissed and let out a yowl that made me scream. This had been making those god awful noises in the past several nights. This monstrosity, this dead abomination. It turned its head in the direction that Victor had fled, let out a triumphant growl, and bounded off into the night. I crawled back from that place. I couldn't get my feet under me. I was so terrified. Miss Vega found me. She was crying as she helped me off the ground. "I heard a gun. I thought he had killed you," she half screamed. The cops came. They took statements and began their search for Victor. I left out the part of the larger dead cat creature. I was certain that no one would believe me. I'm not sure I believed it. It didn't take long to find Victor. He had run a full 2 miles right into the highway. Witnesses said they'd seen him running and screaming into traffic. He ran in front of a semi, and I couldn't stop in time. What was left was strewn across the freeway. I was It was terrible to say the whole neighborhood was breathed a slight sigh of relief. They'd heard that he had died. They had heard that he died. Everyone assumed that he'd been been on some kind of drug. I don't know if they tested that what was left on his body, but I'm certain if they did, they wouldn't find anything. It was not drugs. They had forced Victor Comedy into traffic. And that terrified howling stopped as well. I assumed that it fulfilled its purpose and was gone now. I hoped it was gone. Maybe Diego was resting in peace now. We all went back to normal surprisingly fast. No one mourned the death of our neighbor. There wasn't even a funeral. His extended family came and quietly removed all of his belongings from his house before putting it back onto the market. It sold well below market value because Victor had torn it up inside and they wanted it gone as soon as possible. Miss Vega's parents actually bought the place. They were recently retired and wanted to live closer to their only daughter and grandchild. And what could be closer than next door? They even invited us over for a cookout. Every trace of Victor was gone, and it was replaced with the framed photos of laughing children, tasteful decor, and beige carpet. It was surreal. I kept looking out past the backyard fence, as if I was expecting to see that monster again. It's been months now, but I can't get the image of the creature out of my mind. If I sit still long enough, I could even imagine its stomach churning smell. I can't look Miss Goldus in the face anymore. She waves and tries to make small talk, and I always try to come up with an excuse to leave. The way she smiles, I think she knows what I know. She's back to her old self as well. She could see, like we could see her quoting on the front porch while the weather was nice, drinking her tea, weeding her garden. Now it's colder, you can see her silhouette inside the house, still drinking tea and quoting. She'd even got another cat, a sleek gray tabby named Mateo. I really hope nothing ever bad happens to that cat. A good one as well. A long one, but a good one. I didn't think that was going to be that long. And as I promised, I will share this into the Twitch show. Please, please do read these on your own spare time. And if you are on YouTube, please come stand by onto the streams. I try my best to start streaming at 10 p.m. at night Pacific time. As for now, I'm gonna get going. Thank y'all for stopping by. It means the world to what you guys do. Try your best to smile, make the world just a tiny bit better if you can. Till we meet again. Bye bye. Oh god, I'm tired.